How's it guys? We are out at Killarney this morning and I'm here with Travis Duggan and he's going to take me through a few tips and tricks to get the most out of my 4x4, and I can tell you I'm super excited. The stuff I've only been able to see in magazines or just watching videos on YouTube, I'm able to go out and adventure and do on my own now. So I've just been introduced to this 4x4 game and I'm super excited. So the idea for this series is to teach you a bit more about your 4x4, take you on some cool adventures and just build up your confidence and really get the most out of a vehicle. Travis, how's your patience levels today?
Obviously very patient, being in this game for almost 18 years. Love being out here most weekends, out in the bush, just enjoying everything South Africa has to throw at us. And I understand your excitement because as I said, I've been in this game for a long time, and trust me, every day is different. Every day there's a learning experience, and that's something I love about this game.
Right, we've just got to where the gravel road starts. We've been driving along in normal two-wheel drive, being on a tar surface. You can only drive these Toyota Fortuners in two-wheel drive on a hard surface. As soon as you go onto a gravel road where there's slip available, you need to engage four-wheel drive high range. By doing that, you can do it on the move, under 80 kilometers an hour. The best is to have the steering wheel in the straight ahead position, take your foot off the accelerator pedal, go down to the switch it across to H4, high range four-wheel drive. You'll hear it clicking, you'll see a set of green lights come on, and you know you're in four-wheel drive. When you go into four-wheel drive on the gravel road, you have much better handling. Now all four wheels are driving the car in the same range that you were driving on the tar surface. So if the top speed of the vehicle is 120 km an hour, the vehicle can go right up to that top speed. When we get to our first obstacle, obviously we just evaluate it, see what we'll need. For this obstacle, we are going to need to go into four-wheel drive low range, just to keep it nice and slow, nice and controlled. In four-wheel drive low range, the vehicle has basically 3 times the amount of power that it had before at 1/3 of the speed, at a much slower speed. It gives the car incredible power, and at a much lower speed allows you to control that vehicle through different obstacles. So to put the vehicle in four-wheel drive low range, you have to be stationary. You must put the vehicle into neutral. It cannot be in drive or reverse or park. If you're in one of those gears, it will not engage. With the manual Fortuners, you do have to put it into neutral, and you must depress the clutch fully to switch across to four-wheel drive low range. When you switch across, there's a safety feature between four-wheel drive high range and four-wheel drive low range that you push in and slide it across to four-wheel drive low range. Once you've engaged four-wheel drive low range, you'll get an orange light come up on the dashboard to tell you that four-wheel drive low range is engaged. If it is flashing and beeping at you, it has not engaged. Sometimes, even if you have done that procedure correctly, it might not engage the first time. You might have to reverse back slightly or go forward slightly just to make sure that the gears are lining up, because when you go from your big high ratio gear into your low ratio gear, the low ratio gear sometimes doesn't mesh nicely with the main gearbox, and you need to be in neutral to allow that to take place. And if it doesn't mesh even in neutral, you might have to reverse back a couple of meters or go forward a couple of meters to make sure it engages or lines up. So guys, we've just arrived at our first obstacle, which is a couple of cross axle holes. The key in this situation is to get out, have a look at the holes, look where you want to position your vehicle. You always want to keep your vehicle as high as possible to make sure that it doesn't touch as you're driving through. And in a cross axle situation, you have one front wheel and the opposite side back wheel spinning at the exact same time. When this happens, the vehicle is cross axled, and in a normal four-wheel drive without traction control, those wheels will just spin because the wheels have least resistance. There's no pressure on them, so the differential sends all the power to the wheel with the least resistance, and you end up getting stuck in that situation. With the Fortuner, we're very lucky to have a very good traction control system. It kicks in 16 milliseconds. As you feel it kicking in, we call it biting. You will see from the outside the front wheel starting to shudder and move forward, and you start getting grip, and that vehicle starts moving forward. As soon as the vehicle breaks the wheel that is spinning, it transfers the power back through the differential to the other wheel that still has traction, and just those wheels that have traction push you through the obstacle. Okay, driving into the obstacle, you just want to keep the vehicle as slow as possible. Keep looking for the high points. As soon as the vehicle starts to drop down, just keep it nice and slow. The vehicle's just started to get cross-axled. You can see we've lost forward momentum. As I accelerate, you'll feel the car shudder a bit as the traction control kicks in and transfers the power across the diff, and we start moving forward again. Going through the second cross-axle hole, the car will just get slightly crossed up, and as we accelerate, the car starts biting and moving us forward through the obstacle. So the next awesome feature this vehicle has is what we call a rear diff lock. To engage the rear diff lock, you need to be stationary. It doesn't matter if you're in gear. You press the button, engage the rear diff lock. You might notice that the red light will be flashing. Don't worry about it. It's just flashing because the vehicle hasn't engaged it completely yet, but as soon as you drive through the obstacle and a wheel lifts off the ground, it will engage. The red light will then stay on your dashboard. You will also notice the ABS light turn on. The reason why the ABS light turns on is when the rear diff lock is working. How it works is it makes both back wheels spin at the exact same speed. You need to monitor your speed and keep it under 20 kilometers an hour, because when both back wheels are spinning at the exact same speed, it's fine when the vehicle is moving straight ahead. But as soon as you start to turn, the inside wheel will scrub to keep up to speed with the outside wheel, because the outside wheel is covering a greater distance. This scrubbing can lead to what we call diff wind-up, which can damage the vehicle severely. Once I've engaged the rear diff lock, I just drive through the obstacle, keeping it nice and slow, choosing my lines carefully. You'll notice the vehicle have constant control as we drive through, and I'm allowed to keep it at a much slower speed, just having constant drive on all four wheels, which makes this Fortuner unstoppable. Just a reminder, once you've used your vehicle's diff lock, it is very important, once you do not need it anymore, to stop. Make sure the car is completely stationary, all four wheels stationary. You then press the button to disengage it. Very rarely will the vehicle's diff lock turn off straight away. Often you'll just get the red light starting to flash, which means I'm still engaged. I have not switched off yet. As soon as you pull off, if you just turn the steering wheel to the one side and through the center to the other side while moving forward, it takes the load off the back wheels and allows the diff lock to disengage smoothly. Just to wrap up, after driving our first obstacle, driving through the cross-axle holes, you'll notice we've used two incredible features this vehicle has to offer. Firstly, the traction control, secondly, the diff lock. My personal opinion, I will engage my diff lock and be able to drive at a slower speed and be more controlled through the obstacle. But if you do ever encounter a cross-axle situation, which you don't see straight away from the bottom of the obstacle, it's nice to know you've got the fallback of the vehicle's traction control. You'll notice how these two different features work, but knowing when to use each application will get you out of any sticky situation.
Okay, so we were just thrown straight into the deep end there, but some really technical information to get our heads around. But you know what really helped is actually just putting the example into practice and seeing it out on the course. So I think that's the most important, is like you have your four-wheel drive vehicle, but actually getting out and just figuring out the, you know, the different techniques and the different controls on how to operate and which situations to use them in is super valuable. And I think, yeah, just learning from experience is the only way you're going to move forward in this game. And now we're on to our next obstacle, the river crossing. So we'll catch up with you guys now. All right, so we're at the first river crossing, and for me, when I picture a river crossing, I'm thinking foot flat, huge big sprays, but in actual fact, there's quite a few processes and few steps to get across to cross a river cautiously and properly. So Travis is just going to run us through a few of those, and I'm definitely going to pay attention because I think I've got a lot to learn here.
When you get to a river crossing, what I like to do is stop, turn the vehicle off, let it cool down. You don't want your brakes being hot, your engine hot, your gearbox hot, going through the cold water. It's better just to let everything cool down, When you get to the crossing, it's quite nice to have a look at the crossing. Each crossing is different. You want to know where you will be entering and where you're going to be exiting. When you get to the crossing, it is important to walk it. When you walk it, what I like to do is have a walking stick, because when it is very sandy and you cannot see what the bottom looks like, you need to walk to make sure that you know what's underneath. And you walk with that stick, 1 foot in front of the other, making sure where you're going to place your tire, and feel with the stick. Are there rocks? Are there roots? Are there tree stumps? From there, once you've walked straight across the river, you walk back on your passenger side doing the exact same thing. When you walk the water, it tells you two very, very important things. Firstly, how high is the water? And secondly, what is the flow like when you're going to be driving through? If you can walk straight across without being pushed downstream, you can drive it. As soon as you get pushed even slightly off course, you may not drive it. The reason being is if you look at the area of my leg compared to the body of the vehicle, there's a massive difference. And when you're crossing rivers and having the full flow of the water coming up against the side of the vehicle, there's a good chance that the car can be pushed downstream and obviously will end in a recovery. So for guys that are not used to doing river crossings or don't have the experience doing river crossings, in my opinion, you should take water up to the top of your tire. Where your tire is, measure where it comes to on your leg, and from there, that is the highest point you go. These Toyotas are incredibly well suited for water crossings. If you know what you're doing, you can take water right up to your Toyota badge on the front of the vehicle. But for guys that are inexperienced, it's not worth the risk because a lot can go wrong quickly. When we do an off-road river crossing, I like to be in four-wheel drive low range. If you're unsure of the crossing, you could put your diff lock on, especially that it's a straightforward crossing. We're going to be driving straight. But for most crossings, I keep my diff lock off. Whenever you cross water, you never ever wear your seatbelt. It's very important that if it is a dangerous crossing, that you walk your family through to the other side. The driver is the only person in the vehicle driving through a dangerous crossing. It's important to go into the water very, very slowly to create a bow wave. As soon as the front of the car makes contact to the water, we just accelerate slightly and form the bow wave on the front of the vehicle, and just keep accelerating to keep pushing that wave forward. Vehicles and water don't mix well, especially diesel vehicles, due to the compression ratio that the diesel vehicles run at. If you suck water into a diesel motor, you can do serious damage to the motor. If you're ever driving through a river crossing and the vehicle stalls or switches off for whatever reason, make sure you never ever restart it. Rather put a strap on that vehicle and be pulled out to the other side, because even if the exhaust is slightly submerged and you restart that vehicle, you can get sucked back from your exhaust and you can do some serious damage to the engine of that vehicle. Okay, one of the most common obstacles you'll come across when driving off-road is a rocky incline. When driving on rocks, you've obviously got to be very careful that there's no big rocks sticking out that could do damage to your vehicle. Sometimes you have to walk the obstacle first to see where it's going, especially to have a better look at what it's like up top. Once you walk the obstacle, identify the rocks that might be a problem. Don't be scared to get your hands dirty and move a few out the way. Making sure you've got the correct ground clearance going up, looking for the high points, identifying dangerous points, and making sure you can position your car correctly as you drive up the slope.
All right, so now it's time to put some theory into practice, and Travis has just given me some tips and tricks on how to navigate this rocky climb here, and I'm going to give it a bash. First things first, put my safety belt on, put it into drive. Okay, low range is engaged. I've picked my line and we're going to go for it. Just watching my tires go onto the rocks. Keeping the momentum, guiding myself through the trail. So another little trick I picked up from Travis about accelerator control going over rocky sections and trying to keep your foot steady so that it's not bouncing up and down as the car's going over the rocks is to lean your foot all the way against the side plastic panel that's next to the accelerator. So you actually have a nice sturdy base to lean your foot against, and it gives you a lot more control of the accelerator as you're going over these rocky sections. So it's been an amazing morning out, just spending time with Travis, picking his brain about different situations and how to overcome different obstacles. I think we've just touched the iceberg of what is actually capable with our 4x4 vehicles, and there's so much more to learn. But I think the most important thing is actually just spending time out on the trails, finding yourself in different situations and overcoming them, figuring things out and learning from them. But also just spending time with guys that are way more knowledgeable than you and just asking them the right questions. So for me, I've learned quite a lot already. I think just taking it easy, not being as gung-ho, and a lot of common sense. I think, if you doubt an obstacle, or if you can play something through in your mind and see that it's not going to work out, rather don't do it, rather make the wise decisions. And I reckon, our 4x4s can take us pretty far.